So this finds favor with God. But if when you do what is right and you suffer for it and patiently endure it, that's a tough thing to do. We're going to talk a little bit about suffering today. So the question we're going to ask this morning is, can a good God, an all-powerful and good God, can He allow evil and suffering to exist? Atheists believe, you can read their articles, listen to some of them on YouTube, but they believe that evil and suffering, just the existence of them on earth, and they do exist, right? Evil and suffering. They believe the existence of evil and suffering prove that there is no God. That's what they believe. I'll give you one man you can listen to. And here's their argument. I mean, there's a lot of little flavors, just like when we teach this plan of salvation, we may do it in a different order, but here's their basic belief, those that don't believe that God exists. They say, evil is in the world and innocent people suffer. We would agree, and we grieve over that, but their argument is, evil is in the world, causing innocent people to suffer, children and others. They say, a good and all-powerful God would never allow that. He'd never allow innocent people to suffer, even though we just read from 1 Peter chapter 2 that He does. They say, no, a good and all-powerful God would never allow that. Therefore, God does not exist. It seems incompatible to them and maybe to us on the surface that evil, moral evil and suffering could exist in a world that God made and is under His control. That's what we're talking about this morning. And our question is this: can a good God, all-powerful God, allow evil to exist? And it's not an easy question on the surface. It looks kind of challenging on the surface, even though the Scriptures say a lot about it, really reveal why they're suffering. But that's the question. Can a good God allow evil to exist? It's a little bit difficult to understand for some. There are many things we don't understand, though, and that doesn't mean they're not true. There are many things we don't understand that are true. I don't understand how electricity from the Bonneville Dam, or whichever one feeds this area, can make it all the way to our light switch, and we can just flick a little piece of plastic and poof, we have lights on. I don't understand that, but it's true. And how about this one? Let's say that you're in the earth... The earth is spinning at about 1,000 miles an hour. Pretty fast. 1,000 miles an hour. So let's say that you're in a plane that takes off and is going in the same direction that the earth is spinning, right here, same direction the earth is spinning, and it's going 500 miles an hour. Does the plane fall behind? Does the plane proceed to its destination at 500 miles an hour? Which is it? It's not on the earth anymore. It's in the atmosphere. 500 miles an hour, they're spinning 1,000 miles an hour. Well, it doesn't lose its progress. In 1 hour, that plane will be 500 miles closer to its destination than it was the previous hour. And if it switches directions and goes the opposite way at 500 miles an hour, it makes no difference. Now, whether you understand that or not, it's true. You get a plane moving 500 miles an hour, no matter which way it goes, regardless of the way the earth spin has no effect on the progress of the plane. And science figured that out. They figured it out why? Many years ago. But that's another sermon. Fact is, you don't have to understand it for it to be true. You don't have to understand why evil exists for it to be true or under God's control. But we will talk a little bit about it because God reveals a few things to us. We can understand and realize that God exists. We've looked at evidence in here more than once. There's a lot of it. We understand that God exists, and so does evil. And so, I'll say one more time, that atheists say the existence of evil and suffering prove there is no God, but just the opposite is true. In fact, the existence of evil, the existence of moral evil, proves there's a God. We're going to look at that. So here are the three main points for this morning. Evil cannot exist without God. Why does God allow evil and suffering if he has the power to prevent it? And God's greatest desire requires us to have free will. Well, you might wonder, well, how does that fit in to the idea of suffering? Well, free will gives us the right to do moral evil or to do good. Free will gives us the capacity to cause suffering or to alleviate it. But free will is critical in today's study and in the lives of Christians, as we'll see. So we'll begin with number one. Evil cannot exist unless there's a God. So think about life in the streams of Alaska. You've got minnows, and the minnows eat insects. So the insect dies, the minnow lives. Is that good or evil? Well, then later during the right season, the salmon spawn. And the salmon, they eat the minnows. The minnow dies, the salmon lives. Is that good or evil? And then the bear comes along, catches the salmon, eats the salmon dies, the bear lives. Good or evil? That's just nature in action. It's neither, well, the atheists would say it's neither good or evil. We would say it's very good because that's God's design. But the point is this, that those things don't have any evil in them at all. None at all. So how about this? They're just nature in action. Branch. Picture it weighing 100 pounds, because many of them do. Good or evil? Neither. Just nature, the way, as a Christian, we're going to say it's good, but to an atheist, neither. It's neither good nor evil. It just is. It's just nature. It just grew. How about this rock? Good or evil? Same. Product of nature. Inherently, it doesn't have any motive. It's neither good or evil. How about a river? How about a big river? Good or evil? Neither. But all three of these things kill people. There are landslides. Big rocks go tumbling down freeways and people die. It's happened in Washington and other states. So rocks can cause suffering, but they're not evil. They have no motive. It's just a natural suffering that it can cause. Branches fall from trees, hit cars, hit people, kill people. Not good or evil. It's just a natural cause. Rivers flood every year, even in America, and people die from flooding. But it's natural, neither good nor evil. Trying to set a stage right here. They're not evil, but they kill people every year. The atheists now, back to them, this is really important. They say there is no God, only nature in action. Only nature. And Bill had an awesome class in Genesis in the beginning about the Big Bang Theory and how, they have to reconsider. We have a new telescope that goes out 35 billion light years. And the universe isn't as they expected. Apparently no Big Bang. Lots of things we don't understand, but they're going to claim, the atheists, those that don't believe in God, that things are controlled only by nature, that is mindless and motiveless, and it is neither good nor evil. Everything is controlled by physical laws. The rock, branch, the rivers. But evil cannot exist without God. They claim no God, only nature. Christians and atheists, perhaps you know some, Christians and atheists acknowledge two kinds of suffering. Most atheists and all Christians, we recognize natural suffering. The river floods, COVID, cancer, a toothache, natural suffering. Most atheists also recognize suffering from moral evil. You can get on YouTube. I don't have the title, but I'd be glad to get it for you. But there's a professor, an atheist professor at Columbia University, speaking with Tim Keller. And they're discussing this kind of thing. And this professor, he doesn't elaborate, but supposedly he was not an atheist at one time. But when he started thinking about the Holocaust, an immense moral evil, 8 million people killed treated horribly and killed in concentration camps. He claims 80 million people worldwide died altogether. A horrible crime against God's creation and the people he made. And he says, I'm paraphrasing, but once he thought about the Holocaust, which was totally morally evil, he decided there is no God. That's absurd. Remember what we just talked about? Branches, rocks, rivers, natural laws. They're atheists, and my professors in college all admit there's no morality in the acts of nature. So when atheists, and the majority of them, acknowledge moral evil, when they acknowledge that, they're admitting there's a God. Without a God, there is no moral evil. It just is. It's just natural occurrences, nature happening. To say there's moral evil, and most atheists do, and this is the most common argument they use against the existence of God. There's moral evil and suffering, so there can't be a God. No, just the opposite is true. Opposite is true. If we have moral evil, then we have someone that determines what morality is, what good and evil are, because nature does not. So they're admitting there is a judge. There's some kind of judgment system that can decide between what is naturally causes suffering, what is morally evil and causes suffering, whether they realize it or not. To say there's moral evil is to say there is a God and there's a standard, and they are right when they draw that conclusion. They're right when they conclude the Holocaust was morally evil. Their consciences, their God-given consciences, tell them that is wrong. Animals don't have consciences. A bear can eat a rabbit or a deer, or kill it quickly or kill it slowly. No conscience. But human beings, we have a God-given sense that some things just aren't right. And atheists, they have that. And so evil proves the existence of God. Evil only exists when God's laws are broken. And I don't know how you're processing right now. You know, you've got your own life and your own challenges and goals and struggles. But let me share this with you. This is gigantic, whether it seems to be to you or not. This was the catalyst for me becoming a Christian. You know, a double science major at the U of Washington, getting hammered with evolution and all these they weren't attacking the existence of God as aggressively as they do today, but they were still attacking. My science books attacked the idea of there being a creator. So I'm tending bar one day. That's how I put myself through school. Tending bar one day and just, lots of homework and just mulling things over and evolution, the consequences of that. And it occurred to me, even though humanists teach this, I didn't know anything about religion or humanism, which is a form of atheism. And just thinking about it, thinking, I said, it occurred to me, if there's no God, then there's no evil. Nothing's wrong. I could steal from the till today, and it's not wrong, because if evolution is true, then it's survival of the fittest, and by stealing, it's making me more fit, and I have the ability to steal it, or drinking at work, several drinks, or whatever I wanted to do. If there's no God, no standard giver, then there's no sin, and there's no evil. I wasn't taught that. It just is an obvious conclusion. I'm telling you, this is so huge, because you may think it's silly, but there are people like me that are thinking this through, and what hit me was this. That's huge. Before it was whether they're God or not, no big deal. I thought, no, it's a huge deal. I need to know what I have the freedom to do. Is it okay for me morally okay, because there is no God? And I just happen to be in the United States of America government, but I could be in a different government. And does it matter? Is there right and wrong? And that very night in the bar, I said to myself, I have to know. And a lot of people that want to know, they may have already made up their mind. There's no God because of suffering, but they haven't heard the argumentation. They don't realize that by saying there's moral evil, there has to be a God. So I said, I have to know. And I'm letting you know that this can change lives. The people that need to know this information. It changed mine. The study was incredible and exciting. And so much information for the existence of God, and none against him, that here I am today. Big deal. So evil only exists when God's laws are broken. So why then does God allow evil and suffering if he has the power to prevent it? Won't go into depth on this one today. We'll touch on it. But number one, does love, because we're told that God is love, 1 John 4, does love demand that God remove all suffering and evil? Does it demand that? The God of love tells us that suffering has many benefits. We read one already, that it finds favor with God. If you live with dignity, even when you suffer for something you didn't do, when you suffer unjustly, God says, wow, that's the kind of holy person I'm looking for, that lives with dignity even when unjustly accused. So he tells us there's many benefits for suffering. We won't look at too many today, but here's one. James 1, verse 2 through 4. Consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance, and let endurance have its perfect result, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. God tells us that trials, another word for suffering, they make us better. They improve us, so we may be perfect and complete. And there are just lots of benefits. That's why he allows it, because there's much good. We understand the pain. That's why we don't ever look forward to it. I don't. I know the truth about suffering. I still don't want it. But he says there's much good. And when you suffer, do it with the mind of God, that this is something that will improve your life or someone else's. So, why does love demand that God not allow any suffering? Well, a mom takes her child to the doctor. Just happened in our family. our home last week. Take the doctor, the child needs a shot. You know, there's suffering involved, right? Minor. But is that good or evil? She can actually let her child experience pain. Or several others here. You know, my American Indians allowed their children, young children, toddlers, to touch fire. My grandmother was born on the Cherokee Indian Reservation in Talcott, Oklahoma. And I don't know if all tribes did this or not, but many tribes, at least those that lived in teepees, they would have a fire in the center of the teepee. And under very controlled conditions, I don't know what the age was, they would, you know, fires attract. They're pretty. They attract me, right? And adults, and they attract little children. And under controlled conditions, they would let their toddler crawl up to the fire and touch a hot coal or put their hand in the flame. Is that good or evil? Is that love or hate? They needed to do that because the braves and the squaws were so, life was so difficult living in the wilderness in a teepee. They needed to put all their energy into the daily survival. They didn't have time to constantly watch the little baby. They had to be able to take their eyes off to mash the corn or whatever they were doing. And once the baby was burned at a young age once, didn't touch the fire again. They didn't have to worry about that issue. Good or evil? Is that love or is that hate? Because it's love. Did you or do you allow your children to play sports? I understand that Cyrus, you were just in some sport, baseball or soccer, is that true? Yeah. So, your parents let you play. Well, so did you ever have any pain? Ever get hit by the ball in the face? Or, oh, you did? Oh, what mean parents you have. They knew that you would have the chance of getting, and they still let you, any of the rest of you, let your children play in sports? Or will you? Or did you? There'll be some suffering involved, but it's nothing compared to the joy, the enjoyment, the life lessons that come from that. That's not hate or evil. That's part of being a good parent. They need to grow up, experience different things, and even toughen up to a point. So do you let any of you ever let your children before they were 18 use the scissors or a knife? Any of them ever get cut? Of course they did. So under controlled conditions, we allow certain things to happen at the right time. And there's going to be a little bit of pain and suffering because that's part of life and growing up. So with us, the Father, the Heavenly Father, controls our conditions. In 1 Corinthians 10:13, it says, no temptation has overtaken you, but such as is common to man. And God is faithful, will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able. But with the temptation, will provide the way of escape also, so that you will be able to endure it. The idea of endurance means there'll be some suffering or unpleasantness there. But God limits it. It's controlled. Sandy may be able to handle 3 times the amount of temptation that I can. So I won't get as much temptation as she does if that's the case. But He will control it. He will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you have the ability to handle at that time, because He's loving and good. And yes, He will allow us to suffer, and that's loving and good. Next week, we're going to develop this on a personal level, on an individual level. Today is kind of the broad spectrum. Oh, does evil in the world and suffering mean that there's no God? We're answering that question mainly. Next week, we'll bring it home. I think it's going to be our last lesson. Am I in trouble, Matthew? Am I doing something wrong? No. Come on up if you need to. Yeah. Oh, that's right. You're the song leader. Got a ways to go, so you can take another nap. Excuse me. Yeah. Next week we'll look at it on an individual, suffering on an individual basis. But for now, kind of a bigger overview. So God's greatest desire requires us to have free will. Requires us to have free will. What is his greatest desire? Matthew 22:37 says, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind." And then Jesus says, "This is the great," I can't remember the second word, and foremost commandment. This is the great and foremost commandment. Love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. You may, well, why are we talking about that? It has to do with suffering. You'll see in just a moment. But God wants to be loved. That's his greatest desire. And love cannot exist unless there's a choice to love or not love. Doesn't exist. Could God have forced every one of us to get up every morning with a smile on their face? I love you, Yahweh. I love you. Could he program us to do that? He programmed the wolves to do everything they do, bears, fish, birds. Could he have programmed us to tell him every day we love him without us making any choice? Of course he could. And I want to make that offer to you. I would be happy to program your smartphone or your computer to say, "You are wonderful, Don. I love you with all my programming." Or Sarah or Taryn. Would that make your day? Would that make your year? Would you feel really loved if I know it's going to appeal to somebody, but I want to see those who are sincere about it. So I charge a modest fee. It'll be $200, but I can program your computer, not just in text. I can program your computer to verbally tell you out loud where you can hear it, "I love you, Sue. You're so wonderful." So not now, don't raise your hand, but $200, that's all. And you let me know if you'd like me or my son to help you program your smartphone or computer. And isn't that stupid? The phone has no choice. It's forced to do that. It may not be forced because it doesn't have a mind, but the idea is it's pushed to do that. God doesn't do that to us. The only way our love for God is meaningful is if we choose it. We either choose loving God or not loving God, but it is totally our choice. Then it's meaningful. When your spouse chose you and loved you, then it's meaningful. There are countries where you can buy slaves and marry them. Not meaningful. But God gave us free will, and along with the free will to love God or not to love him, also comes the ability to choose good, to do good, or to do evil. He made us free will beings. It was his choice, knowing that some or all of us would need a Savior, and he gave that to us. In Deuteronomy 30:19, written to the Jew, but applies today, "I call heaven and earth," Moses is speaking, "I call heaven and earth to witness against you today that I have set before you life and death, and blessing and the curse. So choose life." We are not products of nature. We may live in a natural world, but every one of us, according to Psalms 139, was woven in our mother's womb, fearfully and wonderfully made. And God gave us the choice to choose. We can choose life, which would be the blessings and following God. We can choose death, which would be the curse right here, and disobeying God. But he gives us the choice. And that's what makes every life in this room meaningful. Your ability to choose God or reject him. So he's given us free will. You can choose to love him, choose not to. But having a choice to love or having a choice to do moral good or moral evil, having the choice is the only way that it makes it meaningful in our relationship with God. Meaningful is when we choose the right thing. So free will enables us to choose good and or evil. Choosing evil, moral evil, always causes suffering, at the very minimum, to the doer. But usually when we choose evil or someone chooses evil, it causes suffering to other people, certainly to God our Father. But moral evil always causes suffering, and we get to choose, shall we do that or not? But God set a plan in motion to end all pain, evil, and suffering. Yeah, he allows it for now because it's part of his plan to say who's going to choose him and who's going to love him and who isn't. But he put a plan in motion to end all of the yucky, the pain, the suffering, and the evil. In Revelation 21:4, it says, and he will wipe away every tear from their eyes, our eyes, the saints. There will no longer be any death, no longer any mourning or crying or pain. The first things have passed away. Be a time when we don't have to put up, because we get tired. No one enjoys suffering. That's what the word means. Looking forward to the day when it no longer plagues us, no longer in existence. It's cast in the lake of fire. So Bill said some important things on the Lord's Supper today. I want to note a couple things. He pointed out that the suffering that Christ went through. Talk about innocent and suffering as an innocent person. Christ did. And people do today. That's true. But it took his suffering to pay for our sins, to redeem us, to buy us out of slavery to sin into the household of God. It took the most innocent person ever to suffer so that we don't have to eternally. If you'd like to know more about that, if you'd like to become a child of God today, what a great time to do so. If you need any kind of assistance from the church, prayers, counseling, we'd love to help. So at this time, we're going to sing the song of invitation. Please rise. While we sing it, come forward if we can help you at this time.